Whenever there's a desperate government, there are desperate tactics. Scott Morrison and Peter Dutton are ramping up the anti-China sentiment, and for a relationship that has a two-way trade of over $100 billion each year, this is probably not a smart move. And I do realise that it's not just about the money, but they're suggesting that the Chinese government will be barracking for an Albanese Labor government at the next election, and why wouldn't they, after all the rubbish that they've had to put up with over the past 3 years from the Liberal Party and the damage that has been done to the Australia-China relationship? And if the Liberal Party is going to criticise the Labor Party, who haven't been in federal government since 2013, well, let's look at what the Liberal Party has been up to. They created a cheap 99-year lease of the Darwin ports for the Chinese government. Former Liberal Party Minister Andrew Robb ended up with an ongoing consultancy worth $880,000. The member for Chisholm, Gladys Liu, she received a secret $1 billion donation from a Chinese businessman. The Julia Bishop Glorious Foundation funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars from Chinese mining interests into the Western Australian branch of the Liberal Party. And Liberal Party MPs such as Josh Frydenberg and Tim Wilson are pointing to the endorsement of China's Global Times newspaper, where they promoted Albanese as a safe choice and said that Scott Morrison is a clown. Well, currently 55% of the Australian electorate believes in that sentiment. We've been saying that Morrison is an incompetent Prime Minister for well over 3 years, so there's nothing new that's being revealed there. But if the Liberal Party wants to ramp up the anti-China rhetoric, they have to be very, very careful, because all of this stuff will come back to bite them. There's a lot of people in the Australian community who are of Chinese heritage, and they do vote. And it's going to have a strong effect in those seats with a high proportion of the Chinese community, such as Reid and Bennelong in New South Wales and Chisholm and Kooyong in Victoria. And I think that instead of trying to ignore this issue, it's probably best if the Labor Party probably attack this issue head on, because they've got a lot that they can throw back at the Morrison government.
First thing, I guess, to look at is that they use the Chinese community when it suits them. The head of the Liberal Party campaign in Gladys Liu's seat admitted in court yesterday that the voting signs were actually designed to mislead Chinese voters into voting one for the Liberal Party. He also claimed that these signs weren't the ones that he had approved, that they were changed somewhere down the track. He said that under oath, so I'm quite happy to accept that as the truth. And it fits in with what we know of elements of the Liberal Party. I think it's also fair to say that Gladys Liu's too close ties to the Chinese government, and there's a lot that still needs to be brought out into public, and there's a lot that still has to be revealed, make it very dangerous for somebody like Peter Dutton to start spreading anti-Chinese rhetoric. And the other thing too, if Australia really does want to enter into a war with China, which it doesn't, our biggest warship was sent to Tonga to help with the tsunami there, broke down and needed help from the Tongan Navy. And then because of there were some sailors on the ship with COVID, Tonga had to go into lockdown for 5 days. So if that's how we deal with a smaller, less well-resourced government, how are we going to deal with China? So Dutton is walking a very dangerous line here, probably not thinking of the consequences, the international consequences, but thinking of his own future as a potential prime minister or a potential leader of the party.